So about 2 weeks ago, right before Intel had this amazing move towards the upside, I told you guys that if the stock fell below 30.25, then look for a 4% pullback down to 29.20. Take a listen. So current support for Intel is going to be at 30.25. If the stock cannot stay above this level, then I want you guys to look for a 4% pullback to 29.20. So as we're looking at the current chart, you guys can see that my analysis on Intel was 100% accurate. So if you're currently watching and you are not yet subscribed, do consider subscribing. And that is if you want the best technical analysis available on YouTube for free. Now, not only am I predicting short-term movements, I've also given to you guys long-term price targets. And if you go ahead and look at my track record, you guys can see that I've given out a lot of amazing plays, especially on big tech. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the trade desk, ticker symbol TTD. So while the stock was at support at $45, I told you guys that if it fell below that level, then look for a pullback to $43.48. Take a listen. So current support for the trade desk is going to be at $45 per share. If the stock cannot stay above this level, then I want you guys to look for a 6% pullback to $43.48. Now, if we come over and look at the current chart, you guys can see that this was another analysis with 100% accuracy. Let's now go ahead and take a look at the NASDAQ triple Qs and the S&P 500. So back on Friday, I told you guys that the NASDAQ was bearish below 598 unless it could get back above 599. And looking at the current chart, you guys can see that that's the exact level that the NASDAQ is now trying to claim. And the same thing goes for the S&P 500, which I told you guys it was bearish below 662 unless we could get above 663. And what do you know? That's the exact level that the S&P 500 is trying to claim. With that said, I'm still overall bearish on the markets, and I'm looking for a 17% pullback in the NASDAQ to 495, and then a 24% pullback to 450. And on the S&P 500, I'm looking for a pullback down to 574 and a pullback to 532. So based on current market conditions, SoFi says to expect pauses and a 10 to 15% breakdown throughout this bull market. Take a listen.
Joining us for more right now in the markets is Liz Thomas. She is SoFi's head of investment strategy. And Liz, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
All right, let's talk about where things stand. We are ending the third quarter. We're heading into October. Some people think it could be spooky, but hey, we are looking at the markets near all-time highs. In fact, if we open at these levels, we'll probably push us back above all-time high levels. How do you feel about things overall?
Well, I mean, the spookiness that we talk about in markets has been talked about since the end of August, heading into September and this seasonally weak period that usually happens in September and October. I think right now, when we look at just the longer-term bull market and the direction of travel being northward still in markets, we would expect there to still be breakdowns in beta along the way. And yes, things feel extended. Yes, they feel frothy. Yes, the market has been going up for a long time, but that doesn't mean that it has to come back down and suddenly be over. I still think there's time in this bull market to go, but I do think that we'll have some of those pauses and some of those breakdowns, let's call it in the 10 to 15% range throughout the bull market that continues.
Okay, people look at this and say, okay, it's starting to feel like the 1990s. You have financing that's coming through. Obviously, these companies are different. They actually have profits and revenue. But how do you judge that comparison?
Well, I mean, even if you map it against the 1990s, we're probably not at the end. We're still probably somewhere in the middle of that range. And if you look at just the extended period of time that the 90s lasted on this enthusiasm, obviously about the internet, not AI, but the enthusiasm lasted for the better part of 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years before it turned over. And then overlay actions of the Federal Reserve on top of that. Right. Things still went just fine through what we would consider an adjustment cutting cycle. So the Fed cutting because they can, not because they have to. And actually the market continued to rally even as the Fed started to hike rates again later in the 90s. So we've still got time here.
And your point is you got to be in it at this point.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to go back to Chuck Prince, but you got to dance while the music's playing. You think the music's going to be playing for quite a while.
I think the music can continue to play for quite a while. It's difficult to find something on the radar that can derail this in the near term, right? Valuations alone probably not going to derail it entirely. There would have to be an event, but that's always a risk, and you can't invest looking for the next event. So yes, I do still think there's time, and I think that investors have to be what I'm calling prudently present, right? You don't want to pull all your money off the table, but this isn't necessarily a time when everything's at all-time highs to be throwing a ton of new money in front of it. I think you can still wait for some of those periods, like I talked about before, the breakdowns in beta that are likely to occur.
Going into the rest of the video, I have some important levels for you guys to watch on ticker symbol NVDA, NVIDIA, CrowdStrike, ticker symbol CRWD, and the trade desk, ticker symbol TTD. Let's begin with CrowdStrike, ticker symbol CRWD. So currently CrowdStrike is running into resistance at 490. If the stock cannot get above this level, then I want you guys to look for a 3% pullback down to 472. If 472 breaks, then we're looking at a pullback to 455. And if 455 failed to hold as support, then we're looking at a further pullback down to 439. And from current price, we're looking at a decline of 9%. Now to the upside, if CrowdStrike can get above 490, then I want you guys to look for a run to match this high at 507. And if the buyers can push the stock above 507 and use this level as support, then look for a run to my price target at 531. And from current price, we're looking at a return of over 8%. Next, we have NVIDIA, ticker symbol NVDA. So currently NVIDIA stock is up over 2% and is still running into resistance at 183. If we take a look at the chart, NVIDIA has been rejected about 5 times at this level. With that said, if NVIDIA cannot get above this level, then I want you guys to look for a 1% continuation back down to 180. And if the stock breaks below 180, then look for a pullback to 176. If 176 failed to hold as support, then we're looking at a further pullback down to 172. And from current price, we're looking at a decline of 5%. Now to the upside, if NVIDIA can break above 183, then I want you guys to look for a 2% run to 186. And if the stock can get above 186, then we're looking at a run to 191. Above 191, the bull's next target is going to be at 195. And from current price, we're looking at a return of over 7%. Next, we have the trade desk, ticker symbol TTD. So currently the trade desk is up over 4% and is currently breaking above resistance at $49. If the stock cannot stay above this level, then I want you guys to look for a 3% pullback to 47.55. And if 47.55 failed to hold as support, then look for a pullback to 46.22. And if that level breaks, then we're looking at a further pullback down to 44.53. And from current price, we're looking at a decline of 9%. Now to the upside, if the stock can stay above $49, then look for a 3% continuation to 50.81. And if the stock can get above 50.81, then look for a run to 54.40. Above 54.40, the bull's next target is going to be at 56.70. And from current price, we're looking at a return of over 15%. Overall, to the upside, my price target for the trade desk is going to remain at $76 per share. And from current price, we're looking at a return of over 56%. Alright guys, if you find this information valuable, go ahead and leave a thumbs up. And if you're currently watching and you're not yet subscribed, do consider subscribing. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.